Hi, Wayne Dorband here for the bi-weekly NTP CEED webinar huddle that we hold here at our Northern Colorado headquarters in Loveland, Colorado, both live here at our site and also going out over the web to those of you that are watching. Enjoy what we have for you today. We're so excited. We've got Tracey Long with us here today. We're going to have a really fun interview section with her. Anybody that has questions, whether you're here live in the room or out on the internet, just go ahead and put the questions on your chat box in the room here. Raise your hands up if you've got something and we'll acknowledge you. We'll try not to interrupt Tracey if she's in the middle of describing something, and we'll put our questions to either the end or after she's finished a description of something, and we'll go from there. So let me introduce Tracey Long. Tracey comes to us today from, I believe are you in Boulder today, Tracey? Tell me your location.
Yes, I'm on from Boulder.
All right. Well, I met Tracey about a year and a half ago or so because at the time she was living in Bertha, Colorado, which is my hometown. And Bertha is a small town north of Denver, about 45-minute drive. In the excitement of the early 2000s, it was one of those places that was right in the path of growth, and I think there were people that projected that you could probably by now even drive all the way to Bertha and never feel like you were leaving Denver. Well, that growth sort of got stopped by the recession in the late 2000s, and still you can drive into Bertha and it looks like if you closed your eyes and put a blindfold on, you'd open your eyes and think you're in the Midwest somewhere. It's not attached to the city of Denver. It is a rural community in the still, close enough to Denver that it's commuting distance. A lot of people commute there. It's also close to Loveland, where we're at, probably a 5-minute drive from Loveland. South end of Loveland, it's about 35 minutes from Fort Collins, probably 30 minutes from Boulder, and 10 minutes from Longmont. I think I read somewhere where there's about 500,000 people that are within a 30-minute drive distance from Bertha. But Bertha itself is a very rural area. So I met Tracey. She actually, I think you might have reached out to me. I don't remember the specifics, Tracey, do you?
I attended a meetup that you offered up at your farm on aquaponics.
Okay. So, as a matter of fact, that's actually, we're beginning the season this year again, starting this tomorrow night, actually, out at my place. So, all right, so you had responded and joined a meetup and came up to our ranch where we were actually doing an introductory session on aquaponics. Seeing something here as I'm looking and seeing I had something on my lip there pulling off. So we had this introductory session. Tracey and a group of people came up, and that's when we met. And she told me about some projects that were going on in Bertha, and I'm not going to sort of ruin that. I'm going to let her talk about those as we get started here, that involve agriculture there. And I'm actually hearing, Bill, do you have it on your phone too?
Yeah, I do.
Just mute the microphone there. Somebody in the room that was getting this coming in on their phones, and so they can just mute that. And we since then I've become involved in to some level in the stuff that's going on in Bertha as it relates to local food. Tracey is still very involved in that effort, even though she's now moved to Boulder herself, which just shows dedication because it's a 35-minute drive or so for her. And anyway, we're going to talk about her and her life and about what she's doing there and so on. So hello, Tracey. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today. Thanks so much, Wayne. I'm really excited to be a part of your webinar today and really kind of brag about some events that are going on in the town of Bertha and kind of tell you about our path. And I'll be honest with you that 5 years ago I would never have imagined that I would be doing the kind of work that I'm doing now, and it's fantastic. I mean, getting up every day and being a part of the local food movement is just something that's incredible.
Awesome. That is so cool. So we actually prepped Tracey, and she had some questions that she was prepared to answer for us. So we're just going to go through those, and we'll last about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll be done right at 2, or if not a little ahead. And like I said, if you've got questions, you can ask as you go. The people here in the room are actually looking up at a screen that we've got, and so they're able to see up there on the screen what what you guys are seeing out there in the internet, and we'll go from there. So, Tracey, if you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself and the business and really the food movement that you just described briefly, and just kind of start it out that way.
Okay, I'll just start talking, and I'd like to introduce a little bit about my personal side, then tell you a little bit about my background in education, and then I'll tell you what I'm working on right now from a business standpoint. You know, probably the best place to start is to tell you that I have an almost unnatural passion for chickens, especially layers. And so you might see some pictures coming up. There's me with one of my barred rocks, and another picture will come up with my family, all holding chickens. And then I have another photo that I'm sharing with you. It's an old photo that I was able to dig up of me as a small child with my cousins in the hills of Virginia. And I'm the little girl in the red pants with the polka dots, and there I am holding a chicken again. And so something about chickens really almost zen for me, or I almost have a spiritual connection with them, and like to treat them well and really appreciate the food and the sense of peace that they provide with me. So I'll tell you about my family. I have 3 daughters. Their ages are 20, 21, and 26. I'm married to Craig. We're living temporarily, like Wayne said, in Boulder while we're exploring our options to move, hopefully to a small acreage to set up our own micro farm. We've been looking around in the Asheville, North Carolina area, but we're also, considering staying in Colorado and looking in Paonia. We're going on a fact-finding trip there a little bit later this spring. So about my background in education, I have an undergraduate degree in nutrition from Idaho State University. I have a Master of Public Health from the Anschutz Medical Center at UC Denver. I'm a certified secondary school teacher through Colorado's Alternative Teacher Licensing Program. So I'm a former public school teacher. I'm also certified as an American College of Sports Medicine Health and Fitness Specialist and a cancer exercise trainer. I have my own personal training business where I currently take clients on a limited basis because I'm involved in a lot of other projects right now. I own my own business called Big Picture Health. I have a logo for you to see that you might notice. It includes chickens. It's kind of a busy logo, but it represents my life well, where I'm really trying to create an interface between rural communities and the city, so I tried to depict that on my logo. But I currently work primarily as a public health consultant. Working for myself allows me to have a lot of variety in my tasks. I specialize in health, fitness, and nutrition education, especially as it's related to the local food movement. I write grants and provide grant support related to health, fitness, and nutrition. I'm currently studying to sit for the boards to become a certified clinical holistic nutritionist. And then one particularly rewarding project that I want to introduce you to today is my involvement assisting a group of citizens in the town of Bertha, Colorado. We're working to establish a grassroots citizen advocacy group called Bertha Local. So Wayne, can I just dive in and kind of tell you about Bertha Local?
Absolutely. Why don't you go ahead there? That'd be awesome.
Okay. I guess the best place to start with this would be to tell you how Bertha Local has come about. 2 years ago, I had an idea to develop a 30-acre piece of open space farmland in the town of Bertha into a farm park. Bertha has a population of about 5,000 people in town and another 5,000 people in the surrounding rural area. In fact, Wayne's one of the people that lives in the rural area on his farm. The town was given the moniker the Garden Spot of Colorado by its Chamber of Commerce in 1906, not because there were gardens everywhere, but because the local farmland was exceptionally fertile. Common local crops were, and still are today, sugar beets, corn, wheat, barley, alfalfa, and now soy and sunflowers. So you'll notice those are primarily commodity crops. So through networking with local friends, educators, fitness professionals, town staff, and local businessmen, I was able to coordinate a group of people who have become engaged in promoting just not the farm park idea, but also local food. Most involved are interested in promoting the local food movement. I've put a lot of sweat and even, I'll be honest, some tears into the Wagner Farm Park project. I'm proud of the networking, greater than 1,000 volunteer hours, successful fundraising, and ultimately the development of a concept map and draft phasing plan for this project have been developed. So if you take a look on the screen right now, you'll see that concept map, and the area that is outlined in the green, the L-shaped area, is actually part of an 80-acre parcel of land that was sold to the town of Bertha as open space by a former farmer in our town named Mike Wagner. So the farm park is called Wagner Farm Park. The area in the green is an open space easement that we are interested in developing into this farm park, where the north end of the property, that's kind of the darker shade of pink, would be set aside for perhaps a rec center, and the light area in the pink that's over to the side has been purchased by our local school district and currently has a middle school track on it. And it's 10 acres, and only about 5 of the 10 acres have been developed. So right now it's sitting in alfalfa. It's a beautiful field. You know, it's sitting underneath Long's Peak, great blue skies, and it's a beautiful place. This concept map is something that I'm really proud of, and took about a year to be developed and presented to the town of Bertha. So this project, although very successful and still alive, has been placed on the back burner. And I'll just make a long story short by telling you that I have been highly educated and learned a valuable lesson with the experience of trying to take a 30-acre parcel of land in the town of Bertha and blow it up into this huge farm park project. And what ultimately happened, I believe, is that the project ended up overwhelming our town staff. And so rather than put up a huge fight for the project or give it up altogether, our working group has come up with what I will call the fabulous Plan B. Essentially, we decided to create a small project list, a medium project list, and a big size project list. And the Wagner Farm Park project was put on that longer range, big size project list. In addition to that concept map, we even went as far to develop a draft phasing plan for that project, which really is a multi-million-dollar project that has collaboration already in place between Colorado State University and the University of Colorado Denver. I'm telling you, it's going to be a neat project one day when it really comes to fruition. So from putting that on the back burner and establishing this different group called Bertha Local, we wrote a mission statement and values. We developed a logo, and we formed a board of directors, and now we're really proud to say that we have a fantastic plan in place. I know that I provided Leanne with a PDF file that shows the logo that we developed. So there's our logo for Bertha Local. And our mission statement and values are listed there. It's a little too small for me to read, so perhaps from where you're sitting, you can at least read the mission statement, and then you can see that our values are centered around education, agriculture, community, and I can't read the fourth one. Is there
healthy food.
There
Healthy
you go.
Environmental lifestyles.
Thank you very much. Yes, so the environment. I mean, we care a lot about our interaction with the environment. And then if you continue, I think there's a second page to that sheet that shows our current project list. So we took these project ideas and we then, boy, I don't know if it's coming up there, but we have, yeah, there we go. So you can see that we have a current project list. These were the small projects that we decided to adopt. We have project leaders, and Bertha Local is working right now as an umbrella organization that's filed for 501c3 not-for-profit status that will handle the business and management aspect of these project groups. They all have project leaders and a strong group of volunteers backing them all. And we have really exciting things going on in town. Starting to develop our name and our face, and certainly we're working to get our website up and running. And then you can see that we have projects for the future and things that we want to begin working on. So we've come a long way, and this whole process of, developing the Wagner Farm Park project idea, the concept map, the draft phasing plan, and then ultimately developing Bertha Local has taken us about 2 years, just to help you kind of understand the time frame, because I think a lesson to be learned for me too is that the project has taken to at this point a lot longer than I really ever imagined that it would. So that's kind of a summary of what's going on with Bertha Local. I'd like to add just 2 more facts about myself regarding my values and interests that attest to my commitment to the local food movement. I like to call myself an environmentalist by participation, not exclusion. I strive in my work, my play, and my hobbies to advocate for great care of our planet and all of its inhabitants, plant and animal. My hobbies include birding with my daughters. We're currently observing a handful of great horned owl nests in the area that have owlets, and it's a lot of fun. I work out with my husband. I like dog walking, hiking, biking, gardening, cooking, reading, and probably the most important one is learning. I'm a lifelong learner. I had the opportunity also to study extensively under Dr. Lauren Cordain, who happens to be the author of the Paleo Diet, in graduate school at Colorado State University. This really has led to a passionate interest to both follow and advocate for an ancestral eating pattern that really includes humanely and sustainably raised meat and fish and produce. And I really like to stress that, yes, I also mean humanely raised fiber crops. I'm passionate about biointensive farming practices that minimize inputs of synthetic fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides, water, and fossil fuels. I really like to point out that I practice what I preach through my lifestyle habits and behaviors, and even in my daily work. So that was the long answer for the question number 1, Wayne, but that about sums up where I'm at right now.
Well, thank you so much. That's awesome. Any questions from anybody either online or here in the room for Tracey before we go on with some of the other questions that we have? I'm going to ask one person in the room. Bill, were you aware that a lot of this kind of stuff was going on?
No, Wagner Park, I thought Wagner still owned that. I didn't realize the city had owned it. I didn't know there were any plans after Mike died. So it's news to me, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, Bill's a long-time resident in the area, and so I think, Tracey, there's a message there for us that as we move ahead, obviously we need to just continue to work on letting people know. And Bill's heavily involved in our activities here with just different projects, and he has a huge passion for Loveland and particularly the homeless in Loveland. So we're working on a project there. Well, I've got a whole series of other questions to ask, so I'm going to start to go through those. That was a great introduction for both yourself and what you're doing with Bertha Local and in your own businesses. You know, I saw a couple things there that actually spurred some other questions for me. You know, I know that you have been looking around. Tell me, and this was not a question that I gave you, what are you looking for in a homestead, kind of a mini farm? Do you have some specific criteria that as a family you're looking at?
I would say at this point the predominant feature for us is hydration, is water. You know, we like Colorado and have been looking around Colorado a lot, but we have found that we seem to be able to either afford land or water rights, but not both simultaneously. And that's why we've directed some of our attention looking more toward the east side of the country where, you know, water tends to fall from the sky. And, you know, some people scoff at me when I say that because of the floods that we had here in Colorado last September. But I guess, you know, knowing that, you know, we can get about 40 inches of regular rain in a place like North Carolina versus the standard 12 to 14 inches of rain we get per year here in Colorado, that really makes a person kind of dependent on some sort of irrigation and water rights, has made us kind of steer more toward the east side of the country. My husband would really like to, retire soon from his job and look more into this farming aspect for a way of life. And he really would love to have a fishing pond, which I know you have a great fishing pond, Wayne. So, your farm is a great model for us to, aspire to.
Well, thank you. And we love it. It's interesting because, again, for the group, Tracey and I were talking before we started today about permaculture in specific, and even about a place she visited earlier, actually about a year ago or so. You said, or in the fall. I don't know that it was a year ago, but you visited there in the fall, and it's called the Central Rocky Mountain Permaculture Institute, and she was talking about food forests that was there, and just was sort of amazed by it. What's interesting is that a lot of people have that same sentiment that you do about worrying that the West, a lot of places, if they were to locate here from a farming perspective, they're gonna run out of water, or they can't afford water. Like you said, you could maybe afford the land, but not the water.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the folks that are heavily involved in the permaculture movement are hoping that we can figure out ways to use this land that we have here in the West in a more dry land sort of mode, which is similar to the way that our predecessors here, the Native Americans that lived here for a long time before the white settler came, were able to live in concert with the land. So I hope that maybe we could dissuade you and others from moving east to where there's more water in the future if you want to be involved in the farming and homesteading type of activity, by hopefully figuring out ways we can use water and conserve it much better. But that's a whole different topic. So
I'd like to interject something along those lines, in that Bertha Local, one of our project groups is called Community Education, and that group has actually been working to fund a scholarship to send one of our local Bertha residents. Her name is Lonnie Godet, and she's an environmental engineer. So she applied for a scholarship application we put out and won the scholarship opportunity. We're sending her this month, in fact, to a CEED school in Tucson, Arizona, that is run by, I can't remember the name of the Indian reservation, but they are a specialty group that trains people in how to grow drought-tolerant plants. And so this is phenomenal. She'll spend a whole week living in this environment and learning about seed saving and creating a seed library around plants that would thrive in our area, in areas like Tucson, places with little water. And she's bringing this knowledge back to northern Colorado, and she's going to be available to teach, and she's also planning on setting up the seed library, seed saving bank, hopefully through local resources. We were really hoping to create a partnership with the library in Bertha to create the seed library and a seed exchange. So I just wanted to let you know that that's going on, and I bet there's a lot of people sitting in the room and listening today that could really benefit from that.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. Well, I've got a little more personal questions for you, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, but where did you grow up, and what was one event from your youth that you remember that caused you to pursue the current life path that you're on?
I grew up in southeast Idaho, so another very dry part of the country, really in the heart of potato country. My parents are very dedicated Christians and Bible scholars, and when I was thinking about the answer to this question, it reminded me of a Bible verse I've heard them say that says something like, train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old he will not depart from it. And I know that my upbringing, really, my exposure to farming and food has caused me to be in this place in my life. I'm going to blame my parents and my exposure to living in farm country, being in dirt all the time and loving it, producing, preserving, and hunting for our own food. And even composting when I was a small child was a way of life for us. When I reminisce about my childhood, I see our lambs named Sandy and Lucy that we harvested for food, our chickens and rabbits. You know, and I have a good feeling even when I think about the laundry baskets full of green beans that we canned, and hunting and fishing with my dad, and helping my family put up wild game. I have a couple of photos to show you. One of them is two little girls sitting on a fence. If Leanne can find that one. It's a picture of me and my sister, so it's a very old photo, and the reason I'm showing you this photo is I want you to notice the field across our country road where we lived in Rexburg, Idaho, and that was a potato field. And it was really interesting growing up in potato country because school would start. I think we were in school 2 or 3 weeks, and then we would get a week off because every able-bodied person in the town of Rexburg was required for the potato harvest. And so as a little girl, I mean, you can see me there, I'm about 4 years old. It was essential that we walked behind the potato combines and picked up the culled potatoes, and we were allowed to take whatever we wanted. And my family and I filled wagons and boxes full of these potatoes that were irregular sizes and shapes. I mean, some of them were the size of a small baby, even. You know, as a girl, as a 4-year-old child, it was about all I could do to carry, you know, one potato. And so the next photo is a picture of my sister and I again, and we are standing in front of the pump house at our house in Rexburg, Idaho, and it's a little difficult to see, but we're each holding a very large potato, and my parents used that pump house as a root cellar. It's where we stored all these potatoes in the winter, and we would even box up huge boxes of potatoes and ship them back to family in Virginia. You know, and they just were overwhelmed at what it was like to get these fresh potatoes out of the ground from Idaho. So I wanted to share that with you.
That is awesome. Can you see? Can everybody see how big those potatoes are?
They were massive. Yeah.
You know, again, we haven't ever shared this, but I spent a really very cool part of my life in Idaho, and I'm actually a graduate of the University of Idaho.
Okay.
For my PhD, and I lived in Boise for 6 years, and so I almost consider Idaho my second home. So when you mentioned Rexburg, and I knew you said Southeast Idaho, just have to throw that. If you answer yes to this one, it'll just show you how small the world is. You don't happen to know the Rackham family or the Hammond family, both of which would have been in the area when you were there.
We had Hammonds who were our next door neighbors.
Wow. Brad Hammond, you don't happen to know that name, do you?
It sounds familiar, but it's been a while, Wayne, so.
Well, Brad would probably be similar in age, Tracy. So he's a carpenter, actually has a very fine wood finishing shop, and actually built the cabinets and a lot of the finish work for a house that I built here in Colorado. And he's lived in Rexburg his entire life, and so it's very likely, you know, he could have been your next door neighbor, or at least the family might have been. Well,
it is a small world.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, anyway, I guess to summarize my answer to the question, I would just say that you know, the sense of family and farming heritage and wanting to be involved in food and quality food and preparing and preserving it is something that was imparted on me as a small child, and I certainly have moved away from that, and it's a wonderful place in my life to be returning to that now.
So I couldn't tell from the pictures, were you actually, was your house rural, or were you right on the edge of town?
We were rural.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting one. When you were 15 years old and it was a beautiful day, Saturday afternoon, what would you be doing? What was just a gorgeous Saturday afternoon for Tracy?
Well, I guess I'm giving myself away here in that I have always been my entire life, from the time I was a small child till now, I've been a fitness and nutrition geek. And so I would have been out riding my bike or playing tennis or experimenting with healthy recipes. Like I love to make frittata and experiment with the best possible bran muffins. I also like to bake cookies too, though, but those were things I really loved to do when I was a teenager.
Wow, so even as a 15-year-old, it wouldn't have just been that outdoor stuff. You would have been cooking then too, so you must have taken that on from your mom and maybe other sisters and such.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So can you tell us one person who influenced you in your youth that's had a major life influence on you after your college age, let's say, and you know, if it is one of you, if it's your parents, tell us that, but
Okay.
also maybe tell us somebody outside of your parents also.
Okay. I already mentioned my parents, and I'm just appreciative of the upbringing that they provided me. So I'm going to go on and tell you about one of my high school teachers named Bertha Taylor. She was my high school English teacher and advisor for the school newspaper, as I was co-editor of the newspaper. And what I'll tell you about her is that she encouraged me as a writer, but she also believed in me and encouraged me to dream, to set high goals, and to take on leadership roles. And I tell you, the best thing I learned from her really was that she helped me learn the imperative skills in people management and relationships. And then finally, the highlight really of Bertha Taylor was she helped instill in me the importance of being a lifelong learner.
That is so cool. Do you keep up with her at all? Is she still with us, or is she
Nope,
still in the area?
she's gone, and yeah, she's not with us anymore. But
Okay.
one
Well,
of those rare teachers.
Yeah, here's one that sort of goes to actually sustainability, because I like to ask this of all our guests. What does the term sustainability mean to you?
Okay, I'm going to look at some of my notes. I just had the opportunity to attend a training through Johns Hopkins University on food systems, food security, and food sustainability. So I have this wonderful new certificate and this great knowledge, and I wanted to share with you the definition of sustainability that I learned from Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health. And it says sustainable means economically viable, ecologically sound, and socially just. Okay? I don't really buy into that definition so much, but I also heard a definition at a talk I went to with Joel Salatin. He's kind of a famous biointensive farmer in Virginia, and I loved Joel Salatin's definition. He said sustainability is when your kids want to take on your farm when you've grown old.
That's great. I haven't heard
that one a lot. Yeah. So I ended up, in responding to this question, I have a hard time with the word sustainability on a personal level. And so I sent you another PDF file that I'm hoping that Leanne can post up for us. And I want to talk to you a little bit about sustainability versus a regenerative type model, because I don't think that sustainability is good enough anymore. And so I've shown you a continuum at the top of the page that shows where sustainability sits in the middle of living in a degenerative way versus a regenerative way. And there's some little triangles along that continuum, and I just threw those on there. I mean, they're not in perfect locations, but I imagine that the red triangle probably represents our conventional lifestyle and our conventional use of farmland and raising crops and food right now is done in a degenerative way. Where we look at the word sustain in the middle, the word sustain is really from the root word to maintain. And I would really, under that green triangle, I would classify that area on the continuum as maybe being the green revolution right now, about our need to want to recycle and to compost, and we certainly are trying to make an effort to take better care of our land, but I feel like, and even in this Johns Hopkins course, we talked about the current ecological footprint of our farming practices are certainly more degenerative than regenerative. And so I, set a higher goal up there with that yellow triangle toward the regenerative mark, that maybe we need to strive for higher goals than even just sustainability, maintaining where we're currently at. And so I gave you some definitions there, or really 3 word boxes, words that I think idolize the word regenerative versus the word to sustain or maintain versus degenerative. And then I listed some key points there that I think that we all need to focus on this continuum of, you know, degenerative to regenerative, and where we need to start focusing so that we can improve the health of the planet and improve the health of the inhabitants of our planet. And with that said, I'm going to throw a couple of statistics at you. We know that right now there's about 7 billion people, or we reached the mark of 7 billion people in 2011. So we're slightly over 7 billion people on this planet right now, and about 1/5 of the people on this planet right now are undernourished or underweight. Think about that in contrast to another 1/5 of all the inhabitants on this planet, or 1 billion people, have diseases of overnutrition. So this is the first time in the history of our human species that we live in a world where chronic disease now is higher than infectious disease. And I'll tie this in a little later related to one of the questions that you've given me, and it comes to, I mean, you'd asked me for some quotes to provide today, so I just want to kind of prime the audience with those thoughts about thinking about the health of our food system and the health of our planet and the health of our people, and how that instead of being separate systems needs to become one whole complete system.
That's awesome. By the way, I'm going to throw this out now so that those of you who are listening to this and that are in the room, one of the things you can do to get this out in front of more people is once we're done today, we will have a replay of this, and it'll be up on YouTube, and it'll be up on our websites and other places. This is some great information that Tracey's given us, and it needs to be shared with a lot more people than are here right now. And you can help with that, which is use your connections, whether it's your social network or whatever it might be, and just give them links. You know, say, hey, go to the Wayne Dorband, and we're going to actually have a dedicated channel for this soon. But right now, it's on the Wayne Dorband channel of YouTube, or go to Nourish the Planet. This webinar will be up and on the Nourish the Planet website by tomorrow at the latest, and maybe even later today, and people can go there and watch. This has been just amazing information, and those statistics, you know, she said 1/5 and 1/5. Does everybody realize that's 2/5? That's 40% of the world that's either undernourished or over, and I wouldn't say over, I think you might have used the word overnourished, but that are malnourished. That's the way I've used it. Tracey, would you agree that maybe is a good way to?
You know, and I appreciate that correction, because I certainly think that everyone who is overweight or obese is not well nourished. I mean, there are people who have too much body fat.
Right.
Don't
so
have
I think that malnourished term it actually fits both into the spectrum. It's those that are undernourished or just improperly nourished. And I like to sort of say that we have people starving, and that number I've heard is 1/7 of the world, so 1 billion people. And then you gave the 1/5 statistic, which would be a combination of those starving and then really malnourished from a not enough food basis. And then we've got that 1/5. So, you know, 2/7 of the, you know, 20% of the world, so 1.4 billion. That are malnourished, and probably because they're eating so badly and so poorly.
Well, what's interesting now is we're seeing these two dichotomies even in similar families. So certainly in, you know, as our second and third world countries are improving their status, their socioeconomic status, it's interesting that we see more and more of this dichotomy, that in the same family we can have someone who is overweight and suffering diseases of you know, chronic diseases associated with poor food choices and too much food, and we also in the same family might see someone who is underweight and malnourished.
Yeah, boy, not very many times have we seen that in the history of the world, really. So that's a modern day phenomena. That's not one we should be proud of. So going along the lines of even what you were last saying, I know you've had lots of interesting life experiences. You've told us about some. Can you give us some stories about just sort of those experiences? Maybe one. You've already given us a couple, but maybe give us a couple more.
Okay. To answer this question, I did send Leanne some photos, and so what I'd like to tell you about when I lived in Rexburg, Idaho, the date was June 5th, 1976, and maybe some of you remember that 1976 was also the bicentennial year of our country, so we celebrated 200 years of being a formally established country of the United States of America. But on June 5th, in Rexburg, Idaho, southeast Idaho, the Teton Dam burst. And I wanted to share this story with you. Right here you can see a picture of the Teton Dam, which was upstream from us on the Snake River, burst. I mean, there was some structural problems with the wall of that dam, and it happened on a Saturday. I remember we were all home, and my dad was refurbishing our bathroom, and we had an emergency warning system alert us on the radio. Thank goodness my dad had the radio on as he was working on his project. And we got one of those emergency broadcasts to evacuate immediately because the Teton Dam had burst, and this wall of water was headed our way in a big hurry. And so I'm sharing some pictures with you, and I wanted to tell you about this story because I'm a big advocate of the local food movement because I believe in the need for more resiliency. And I wanted to give you a picture of what resiliency looks like. So if we can go to the next picture that we have up there. So this next picture you see with the smoke coming up, this is the town of Rexburg, Idaho that I lived in. So this is what it looked like as the wall of water came down.
Folks, you see that? That's water everywhere there. I hope you're catching that. It's not quite. If you just quickly looked at it, you wouldn't notice that everything's flooded there. I mean, if you look at that carefully.
Yeah, it's quite astounding. The next picture I wanted to show you has a caption underneath it that's talking about the mud, because it's one thing that we had all that water coming into town, but the fact that it was so muddy and that it actually had flowed over so much of that rich, fertile farmland from all those, the potato crops and wheat crops. I mean, this is terrible, terrible mud that just infiltrated us. And I have a little story from my dad I'm going to read you, and that's not a story, it's a letter that he wrote my grandparents, and I'm going to share a little bit with you. It says, the civil defense has buried over 3,000 cattle. The river bridge heading to our garbage dump failed, so the road will be closed probably for another year. The flood went through 2 lumber mills. They had big piles of fresh cut logs that went through Rexburg like battering rams. We are keeping 5 sheep of one of the fellows I work with. My dad worked for the transportation department. Anyway, he just goes on to talk about what we were facing in that crisis. And if you want to go ahead and go on to the next picture, kind of understanding the devastation that the town faced. Here are some cows that were starving. Certainly there were dead cows everywhere. And we even went through town shortly after the flood, and there were, cows standing on porches, baying and crying, trying to get away from the water. But you can see how hungry these cows look. And if we go to the next picture, I think what's coming up is a picture of some people doing some cleanup work. Yep, and I love the sign. People really had a sense of humor, and really everyone came together and rolled up their sleeves and dug out basements. And I love the sign here that we have free topsoil. So it's in the basement of a building, and people are trying to be funny and trying to find a sense of community and a sense of how to make this better. So I like that, free topsoil. Next picture. Let's see. I don't remember what order these are in exactly, so I really appreciate that Leanne's doing a great job pulling them up. Oh, I love this headline, that the future remains bright. And to me, I mean, as a small child remembering this event, I mean, it was quite devastating to get that emergency response call. And all we were able to do was, get a few valuables from our house and get into the car, and we drove up on a hill right above our home, and we watched the water come. And so as a small child, that's a picture I will never forget. But what I remember most is people coming together and a sense of community and people feeding each other and feeling like the future was fine, and even the future was bright. And so I like the next picture that I have. I think it's the last one I have in this series, and I believe it's a car. Oh, right. So, this happened on June 5th. So July 4th was a pretty important time in our country because we were celebrating the 200-year, the bicentennial, and this town that was ravaged, an absolute wreck. I mean, you know, at this point we maybe have one grocery store open. Here is a car, and you can see the paddles on the outside of the car. The car is wrecked from the flood, but this is our parade on the 4th of July. So we took time out from the devastation and the cleanup and in the pits of despair to have a parade and be silly and, you know, have a car that's paddling down the road because this was the reality. So I wanted to just share this with you.
Wow,
to remind you that
that's an amazing story. So as the minute you started to tell it, literally as I heard that date, I have my own little story. So I was a graduate student at the University of Idaho then, and my colleagues, many of them, more than 10, had projects on the Snake River in a variety of different locations. Mm-hmm. And for at least a day, we were convinced that some of them were dead. Communication then wasn't obviously anything like it is today, but these were guys working on projects right below that dam. And we didn't lose any of them. They all had pretty amazing stories, a lot like yours. Mm-hmm. And I remember vividly some little movies. They weren't videos then, but of that floodwater when it hit probably Rexburg or close to it. By the way, tell everybody, how close was that dam to Rexburg? Do you remember?
I can't remember.
Very close. I mean, I think
it was close. I mean, I want to say maybe 30, 35 miles upstream. It could be a little farther than that.
I bet it was closer than that, actually, a little bit. But you know, if it would have, anyway, these were videos of D8 caterpillars that looked like little Tonka toys that, you know, and I'm trying to, what's, everybody in the room, help me, what's the name of the little cars that we have that are, what? Matchbox. They look like little Matchbox things that just picture you're taking your hose out and you know, spraying a Matchbox car. That's what these massive D8 cats look like as they were getting taken downstream. So I think it was over a day later that there were a bunch of us sitting in Moscow, Idaho, who were literally just on pins and needles wondering whether our friends were dead, because we just didn't know. Yeah. So, wow, you know, it's again small worldish. Is there a person in the green movement or the environmental area that has had a profound impact on your life? And if so, why?
Okay, I'm going to apologize because I had to tell you 3. I couldn't narrow it down to just one. So my first one is Sir Albert Howard. He's an English botanist, or was. He's deceased now. But he really was considered the pioneer of organic farming. And I want to pause here and say that I'm not talking about the USDA version of organic farming, but really more of a biodiverse farming that is not mired in a lot of rules and regulation, but it's really about a spiritual caring of the land. And so I would say Sir Albert Howard, he's really considered by many in the English-speaking world as the father of organic agriculture. And so I've read a lot of his work. The second person is Wendell Berry, who is an American novelist, a poet, an environmental activist, a cultural critic, and a farmer. Again, a biodynamic, biointensive type farmer. And he's a prolific author, and so I really appreciate a lot of his poetry and essays. And I would recommend one if you have a pencil and paper and want to write down one of his essays. You can look up Wendell Berry, and he has a fantastic essay called The Pleasure of Eating. And he wrote it in 1990, and it's quite poignant for where we're all at now.
He looks very happy in this picture we're seeing of him too, so he might have written that essay right before this picture.
I don't know if you've read it, Wayne, but it's pretty powerful.
No, I haven't, so we're definitely going to get that down. By the way, one other thing is we actually will have a transcript of this presentation that we'll be putting out, excuse me, not in the next day or two, but within a week or so, that you can go back and we'll have notes, so you can get those from what the presentation has got. So
Sure.
well, so then I lost track. I was trying to think down the road. Did you give us all three there, or did I?
The third one I'm going to say is Joel Salatin.
Okay.
And I've been to visit his farm in Virginia. I've been to hear him speak in person. And something I appreciate about Joel Salatin is his grass farming practices. He calls himself a grass farmer, and that he's so forthright about standing up for his values and his principles. I'm impressed with him about that.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. He's been here in northern Colorado a couple times over the last several years and spoke to us, so it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to our time, and I didn't even get through all of my questions, but I do want to ask you a couple more here, so we might just quicken up our answers. I think I'm getting real close. Can you tell us about one sort of memorable negative experience that you had? Obviously, that flood's pretty negative. But that might have molded you and helped you become a better person. Is there anything else other than the flood that you were thinking about?
I'll just tell you that I don't know if it's age. I'm 45 years old now, but people keep telling me it's an age thing. But I've had to deal in the past year with some health crises. I was diagnosed with hip dysplasia, which I've only ever heard about in dogs, so it was kind of a shock to me to find out I had it as a person. And so that's resulted in one surgery I had in December that I'm recovering quite well from, and another one I'm facing next month in May that really has set me back as someone who is very active. You know, I'm a personal trainer and teach fitness classes, and I'm outside all the time and gardening all the time, and, you know, preparing to own a farm. And so I've had to pause in my life, and it's helped me become more understanding of other people and their limitations. And so it's been a frustrating time, but also a wonderful time too.
Wow, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
How about a key skill that you've learned in the recent past that's influenced in how you're doing in your business and life today?
Okay. I finished my Master of Public Health degree a little over 2 years ago, and that degree program required a lot of practice with evidence-based research and evaluating research. And so one realization is that I believe that all scientific studies have at least some bias, starting with the researcher's hypothesis, because I don't believe that a researcher would want to study a hypothesis unless he had some sort of vested interest, he or she had a vested interest in that. And so what I have learned is to be more discerning about research and facts that I hear. And, you know, we're inundated with so much information, especially, you know, via the World Wide Web, that I think we all need to stay on top of being educated and try to keep up with advancements and be very discerning about what we tend to hear as, you know, quote-unquote facts.
That's really good. Well, I'll tell you, everybody, you're getting lots of really good stuff here. So make sure that you tell others about this and go back and listen to it again yourself. How about a book that you read recently that's had some influence on you today? Can you give us a title of something that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, and I gave Leanne another PDF because I actually put two books up. One because it's one I just finished, and it's Last Child in the Woods. And that's a book I highly recommend, and it's Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. And it comes from being a former educator and realizing how children and even adults, for that matter, learn more experientially. We learn better with hands-on experiential type learning. And if so much of our learning now, especially with children, is focused on being in a classroom and sitting down and focusing on learning for tests, I don't feel like we're doing a very good job at teaching our children about caring for the environment, caring about the quality of our food and our health, but we are teaching them a lot about how to do math problems on a test. So I like that book, and it gives us a lot of ideas on what we can do to foster care and concern for things broader than general classroom subjects in school. And the second book that I listed is one I just ordered. I just attended a webinar through Chris Martinson on Peak Prosperity. He interviewed this farmer who wrote this book on becoming a market gardener. And so this man and his wife are on 2 acres, and they gross, the last 2 years have grossed $65,000, netted over $160,000 on a 2-acre farm running a CSA. And so, you know, I think many of us are interested in microfarming and farming and growing our own food and providing food locally, which is something I certainly want to do with, you know, my next future career. But what I like about this book is that it talks about how to do it, and it might shave, you know, 5 years of learning off the average person who wants to take up small farming because of the experiences. And I would add too that this farm is set up with all raised beds too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I might have heard it wrong, or maybe you just clarify. Tell us the gross that farm did and the net again. So the gross amount of sales and then the net.
I think I flipped it.
I think you did,
so,
yeah.
I did. I flipped it. Yep. So they netted $65,000, and their gross was $160,000. 2 people running a farm.
$160,000 off of 2 acres.
And they have, I believe, 250 CSA shares, and they run attend 2 farmers markets.
And are located where in the country?
They're in Canada.
Okay, Canada.
Yeah.
Well, I just have actually 2 more questions, and we're running short, so I'm going to speed these up. What's a quote, and you've already talked about one, from anyone, and then we just use the word famous, so your definition of that you can remember that you think our audience should hear because it's memorable to you?
Okay. And I gave Leanne a slide that has 3 quotes again, but I'm going to just share one of them. She
doesn't take instructions very well, does she? She comes
terrible.
up with 2 or 3
I like to talk a lot. I'm looking it up here because I can't see this screen. It's too small for me, but it's the one by Margaret Mead. And I like this quote by Margaret Mead, especially because if you're interested in the local food movement, I think this is very powerful. Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And I just want to stress to you that this small grassroots group of citizens in the town of Bertha has come together, and we are moving mountains. You know, I wake up every day to hear exciting new connections and, you know, new things that our group is doing, and so I really like that quote a lot.
Cool. Well, we're up to our last question, and so anybody in the audience that's got any others, go ahead and put them on the chat or think about them and raise your hand here. We're going to go a little bit over our hour, but not much. That's the cool thing here is we don't have commercials that we have to deal with or another show that we got to worry about getting cut off for. We can be on our own schedule. But so I've stolen this question from a guy that's a real inspiration to me. His name's John Lee Dumas. John Lee Dumas does a podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire, and it's done daily. And the cool thing about podcasts, and by the way, all of these episodes will become podcasts that will be out on iTunes in the very near future. But with John Lee Dumas, you can actually listen to him, you know, every day, or you can listen to him 10 times a day and then skip 10 days if you want. But he has this question that he asks all of his guests, and I just like it so much I'm going to ask it of you, Tracy.
Okay.
If you were to wake up tomorrow and were to realize that you're on a new planet, you're just not where you were, you've kind of looked around and realized that all your needs are taken care of, your daily needs. It appears that it's a lot like Earth, and sort of just like the place you just were in terms of what it seems like, and you found you had $500. What would you do over the next 7 days with your laptop and $500?
Okay, I would right away stash my laptop somewhere because it drives me crazy to be sitting in front of a screen all day long. And I would realize right away the importance of building relationships. And so I would probably pocket the $500, and if the currency of value on this new planet happened to be our banknote that I had in my pocket, I might use it to treat someone to a cup of coffee and start conversations with people and start building relationships, because I can't do much with my computer if I don't have any relationships or an understanding of the culture around me.
Awesome. Well, we are little over our hour, but not much, and I'll give one last call for anybody that's got questions. I sure thank everybody for attending. More importantly, I thank Tracey for taking a time out of her day. Obviously, it wasn't just this hour. She prepared for this, which is great, and we appreciate that. And you know what? I don't think it's too much to give her a little bit of round of applause here from the group here in the room. And
thank you.
We sure appreciate that, Tracey. And obviously, we'll be together as we move down the road on the Bertha Local side of things. And do you have any kind of last things to say? And if not, we'll kind of wrap it up.
I just want to thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share probably, the highlight of my life and career so far, to be involved in, I think, the most meaningful endeavor that I've ever undertaken. And I'll preface that by reminding you that I was a school teacher, and so for a lot of years I was heavily influencing our youth, and now I feel like I have the opportunity to heavily influence entire communities, and around something that matters so much. The health of people begins with the health of the planet and the health of our food, and not segmenting agriculture and healthy people, but looking. I like this thought of not looking so much outside the box, but just making the box that we already have bigger.
Well, that is so great. Again, thank you, Tracey. Thank you, audience. Thanks everybody for being here today. And I really encourage you, share this with others, tell them about it so they can come and watch it. It's free, obviously. It just takes a little bit of time out of your day. You guys all go out and have a great day yourself, and we will talk to you again in, actually it's 3 weeks, because we have this weird month. So the first Wednesday of May comes actually 3 weeks from today, but we'll be coming out with other stuff moving ahead, and I'm nodding my head to Leanne to say that we will stop the broadcast. Thank you, and have a great day.